Hi, everyone. No more excuses. Making health your number one priority. That's what I want to talk to you about today because so many of us make so many excuses and the time is running out. We've got to get this done before it's too late. And that whole thing of when is it too late is different for everyone, but there are some things that have to be done if you want to enjoy a thriving, vibrant life until whenever you decide or your body decides it's no longer going to be upright on this planet. I like to refer to a word that many of us, vegan or not, have used when the light goes off. You can use whatever phrase or wording you want, but often we refer to it as the epiphany. It's like, whoa, that old commercial, like, I could have had a V8. It's that kind of awareness and awakening that many of us go through. Now, the phrase being woke is often overused in our culture and it can mean a whole bunch of different things, but we do often wake up to the idea that there are some things we can do to take charge of our health, and it doesn't involve a whole lot of time or money. But there are some basics that you got to stick to if you want to go down this rabbit hole of living a thriving, fun life. My epiphany was the same year that my sister got breast cancer for the second time, and I doubled over in the bathroom at the ABC affiliate TV station where I worked at in St. Louis, and I couldn't come out of the bathroom. And in a couple of hours, one of my female colleagues who kept checking on me said, maybe we ought to take you to the hospital. And eventually, when the pain got to be so bad, worse than natural childbirth 3 times, which I would eventually go on to do, when this pain got to be so bad, I said, okay, you can drive me to the hospital, which fortunately wasn't that far away, but the emergency room doctor said they had never seen a colon blockage in somebody so young and that it was so large I would need to be on medication for the rest of my life. And I'm going like, my sister's just gone through breast cancer for the second time. I thought I was healthy. I don't want to be on any kind of medication the rest of my life. So I ran to the health food store and read all 5 books on fiber, because that's all there was at the time, and just started adding bran to everything I was eating. Eventually, I would go macrobiotic because that was the diet at the time that was widely touted to help reverse or avoid any kind of cancer, not just breast cancer, which is what my mom, aunt, and both sisters would eventually all get. I'm the only adult female in my family that didn't. So the handwriting was on the wall. I was saying that I needed to do some things differently. My aunt had died of breast cancer in her home when I was 5, and that made a huge traumatic impact on me. But I didn't start connecting all these dots till my sister started going through it, and I'm going like, oh, am I next? Our family would become part of the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene studies, and I wouldn't know until I turned 65 on Medicare and was able to go get the test that our family actually helped develop, that genetic testing for the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes. And I kind of figured, since I look like my dad and this was all maternal breast cancer on the maternal side of our family, that I probably didn't have the gene, but I lived my life as if I did. And sure enough, when I did get tested, didn't have it. But they also know that 10% of breast cancer cases are genetic, and so the odds are at least half the cases in my family of breast cancer were environmentally triggered. So there's much we can do to turn on and turn off those genes, and my life became an experiment to beat the odds, as I often said. Figuring out the truth about diet and exercise became the investigative reporting job of my life. And as a former Emmy-winning TV investigative reporter in Miami and St. Louis, it was my passion to just read and watch as much as I could and try and figure this out, because as I would start saying in my first book, Eat Vegan on $4 a Day, there's no money in broccoli. And when you figure that out, then you realize you have to be your own investigative reporter to figure out the truth about diet and lifestyle. And people were saying to me at the time, well, you know so much about diet and nutrition, you should become a registered dietitian. But for me, I felt it was a little bit too late at that point, but I did become an accredited instructor for Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicines. It was originally called the Cancer Project, and then that morphed into the Food for Life program, which I still am licensed now. They give us licenses to teach those classes. In part 1 of this video, I want to talk to you about why we make excuses. I obviously was terrified of getting breast cancer. But what I recognize is that not everybody is, because we kind of have this cavalier attitude of it's not going to happen to me. Life's too short. I want to enjoy my steak and my hamburgers, and I don't need to go through all that nutrition stuff. But once you start looking at the research and you realize, this is probably something that would benefit me if I don't want to end up like my parents or my grandparents, I really need to do this. And yet, some people feel like it's too late to start. I get that question all the time, especially with regard to exercise, and no, it is not. Never too late to start. you can make amazing differences, especially when you adopt a whole foods, plant-based diet. In just a matter of hours, they can take blood out of your arm and you can see the cholesterol, the high fats just, waving bye-bye. There are plenty of movies now that document this as well, and you can actually see the blood plasma as it becomes more red, less viscous, and again, just the things that healthy plants do for your blood can actually be measured and seen. A lot of people say it's too expensive to go vegan, and no, it is not. I wrote the book on that, Eat Vegan on $4 a Day, totally about beans, rice, grains, and greens. Brown rice is just a wonderful whole grain. I had it for lunch today and yesterday, so there's 2 extra grams of fiber on anything you eat that still has the fiber, that outer bran layer that nature put there so that the food would not deteriorate quite as fast if you take all that out, so think white rice. It also digests more slowly in our body, and that's what blood sugars were meant to do, is react more slowly and not spike up like when you eat something like white flour or white rice, things that have that bran fiber removed. Our bodies were meant to work at digesting, so it would be like the Roto-Rooter when you drink enough fluids and it goes through your system and gets all those toxins out. If you are eating foods that don't have high transit time, as we like to refer to it, then they stick around in your colon, and all those toxins, the pesticides, the herbicides, they stay there and just kind of rot in your gut and possibly can cause colon cancer or other forms of cancer. When you figure out the cost of bypass surgery, when I looked into this, my ex-husband actually had a heart attack and asked me to drive him to the hospital. And when he came out of cardiac rehab 30 days later, I just kind of jokingly asked the nursing staff, so how much would this have cost if Medicare hadn't paid for it? And this was like 15 years ago. They said $1 million. So that is not sustainable, no matter who pays for it. You, me, the government. It's just not sustainable. It's so much cheaper to eat this way, not only for yourself, but for the planet and the environmental issues that are so tied into this. Not to mention keeping animals in a better place, because if you say to a vegan it's humanely slaughtered, it just doesn't make any difference. A dead animal is still a dead animal. So what I really want to focus on part 2 is the cost of neglecting taking care of your health is just tremendous, not only in terms of expenses that you incur in medical treatment, whether insurance pays for it or not. But I often like to say, especially when I was on the lecture circuit before COVID, my parents were so sick and diseased, they could not physically lift my 3 daughters, let alone babysit them. And entire generations are losing each other and aren't even aware of this. And the quality of life that people suffer, the diminished quality of life, is just so sad. And when I walk around our local beaches and I realize how inactive people are, and that they could be so much more vibrant by simply designing a program that might help them to start moving more, just something as simple like that can allow them to be more present with their family. And if I've heard this once, I've heard it 1,000 times, especially when I've competed at the National Senior Games. The real key to longevity is just keep moving. It doesn't matter what you do. Of course, I'm a runner. I'm a little biased because to me, I love it, and it works for me in terms of keeping my weight down, and I had a weight problem at one point, and I just love the sport. I guess I'm good enough at it that I can place in my age group, so that's a fun and rewarding thing. But more importantly, I just feel good when I run, whether or not I race. And you should find a sport or something to do that gives you that endorphin rush, that thrill of just getting out there and doing it, whether it's pickleball, whether it's walking the dog. Get a dog if you don't have one, if you can. There are tons and tons of studies that support this, and you can Google them, but one of my favorites is that those who walk a dog a mile every day have a much longer life expectancy than those who don't do that. So you're getting kind of a double whammy there. You're getting the hormone rush, like oxytocin, and the endorphins of just being outside and walking around. But when we connect with animals, our brains just kind of relax and go there. And it's sort of a way of animal meditation, if you will. So it just makes us feel better. And if we can exercise at the same time, it's really a way to get things done. And before you say, I can't afford a dog, really, that may be a legitimate issue, but also you can find ways of getting funding for feeding your animal. If, for example, it's a rescue animal, there are different programs that can help you do that. But more importantly, it is an investment, not an expense. And the payment that you get by just getting out there and exercising, whether you have an animal or not, just is such a reward because it keeps you from getting sick as much as if you were just kind of laying around watching TV all the time. So, the final part of this, part three, is the mental mind shift that has to come when you make yourself a priority. And you might be going, oh, that's so selfish. No, it isn't. Because if you're not healthy, how are you going to take care of other people, let alone yourself? But you have to come first because it's kind of like that old adage, if you don't love yourself first, how are you going to love other people? It's the same way with health. And the rewards of feeling better when you get this under control are just so important. People ask me all the time, like, how do you find the motivation to do that? In part, it was my birth order. I was the youngest in my family, so I had the visual of so many images at the hospital or at doctors where it was literally a death sentence. And I just was so afraid of becoming like them or becoming like my grandmother, that my mother, who took me to see her every day after school in the nursing home, who had Alzheimer's and didn't recognize any of us, said to me, if I ever get like that, shoot me. And my mom got exactly like my grandma. And of course, we didn't shoot her or, treat her any differently than we treated my grandma. Having these visuals of what you don't want to happen to you is very, very motivating. Now, a lot of people become vegan because of the whole animal rights issues, and there are plenty of movies and videos you can watch out there to get you motivated. Even just simply Google the phrase factory farming, and there's like a billion images. And if one of those images is not enough to motivate you, well, then maybe you want to go down the health route and see if something there uh, might motivate you. That whole idea of NIMBY, not in my backyard, not in my body. Maybe that is the motivating kind of image you need to have for yourself to set those goals and make priorities that revolve on sticking to a schedule every single day that has you at the foreground. So I'm going to encourage you to find some steps that make a lot of sense to you, that will guide you to find activities that you enjoy and building a supportive community. You can do this on social media, through Facebook, Instagram, wherever you find your community. It's so important just to connect with others and to find support. Even small, consistent actions can really make big changes. You may not think so, like that 10-minute walk after breakfast, lunch, or dinner. You think, well, what can that do? But that's the start. And you may find as you go along, you want to add more, or maybe you don't. Maybe that is just as important as every little baby step that you can take. Just understand that you are worth this investment of time. We often find excuses not to exercise, not to go outside, but especially going outside, finding something that you can do within a park or areas that are good for you. Just find ways to, especially get outside in nature, however you do that, to change your mood, to change your habits, and before you know, big changes will start happening. It starts with those baby steps. And I would love to hear your story of what motivated you to get off the couch and what kinds of things the kinds of changes that you've made in your life to be helpful and rewarding to you. And when you find that you make these changes for yourself, when you start feeling better, it's this wonderful cycle of, like, if a little bit feels good, a lot more is going to feel even better. And you are leaving those bad images of what poor health can feel like. I know when I started racing, I would imagine seeing my parents and my sisters, who by this time were dead. I would imagine seeing their faces at the finish line. And that was very motivating for me because I knew that the information they had at the time was not the kind of information I had later in life, and how important it was to try and find the ways that I would stay motivated. And I know that they could only dream about having the kind of life that I have had, which is just feeling good. Because for people who are sick and diseased, that's all they ever want, is just one more day of feeling good. And I'm telling you, if you are young and watching this, the benefits will pay off long term in ways you can't even imagine. And if you want to be around for kids and grandkids, if you're so lucky to have them, I hope that you are. But if you're not, like I don't, I just want to set a good example. And enjoying good health is really important to do that.